Good evening, everybody. Professor Mani welcoming you to yet another edition of our Friday Fundamentals EMDP. This was a journey we began in the month of May, and as they rightly say, time flies. And having completed more than 6 months of consistent delivery of Friday Fundamentals EMDP, we have a very special session lined up for you today. At the outset, I'd like to say that we'd like to commemorate two people who are here, veterans from the Indian Navy, by complimenting them on the occasion of the Indian Navy Day, which is celebrated on December 4th every year. And such a coincidence and serendipity that we have them here today who are going to share some wisdom with us as part of our Friday Fundamentals MDP. I'm delighted to welcome Commander Ninad and Commodore Sriram, both of them ex-servicemen from the Indian Navy, who between them have over 5 decades of experience of serving the nation. Gentlemen, we first salute you for the wonderful service that you have rendered to the nation, and I'm sure you're continuing to do the same, but just the difference is that time it was on a different platform, but this time it is on a platform of sharing, learning, and educating people. Both of them run an organization which specializes in training and consulting. It's called Transfer Mavens. And I was checking with Commodore Sriram, who explained to me that transform, of course, is something that all of us are talking about in today's digital world and the world post COVID, if one might use that phrase. But Mavens here actually means a set of people who have the mission, the zeal to bring about this transformation. And it is with this great pride and happiness that I welcome two veterans to our midst on the BMA platform. Sirs, we look forward to a great deal of learning from both of you during the course of the session today. Happy to share with our participants that both of them had done a program last year too for BMA. Of course, those days were different. We had the Marine Drive Sea Face to overlook when they conducted the program at the BMA Training Center. But today, perhaps most of us sitting from home and a few from your offices have a different kind of environment. But as they say, if you want to learn, then there are no barriers to learning, whether it be physical or digital. On that note, welcome, gentlemen, and may I hand over to you to take us on this learning journey today as part of our Friday Fundamentals. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir, Professor Mani. And BMA, it's a great privilege for both Ninad and me to be sitting in front of you on a, like you said, on an extremely important day for us, the Navy Day. And like you said, it is serendipitous that we are doing this along with a set of industry veterans who are based out of Mumbai. Before I move into my presentation, sir, let me just share a few housekeeping instructions. We'll request you to mute your mics. And if you have a favorite military leader, and especially if you are the leaders from the Navy, it'll be very nice. Please adopt his or her name as your Zoom name for the session. It'll add a great deal of value. It could be a living legend or somebody who's from the past, or it could be a comic character or somebody from, could be Captain Kirk from Star Wars for all you know. Sorry, Star Trek for all you know. If you have questions, please jot them down and post them in the chat box. We are monitoring them, and we do plan a Q&A session towards the end. The program is interactive. We do have a certain set of breakout rooms and some activities. So we request you to participate, and that would certainly add value to all the participants. And in case we have an internet outage, please bear with us. We have backups in place. It just takes us a couple of minutes to get back into shape. With that, let me jump into who we are. Like Professor Mani said, my name is Sriram and my colleague is Ninad, and both of us are naval veterans. We're both engineers, electrical engineers, and we've dealt with the weapon systems and power generation systems during the course of our tenure in the Navy, as in various places of India. We've also done tours on board aircraft carriers, guided missile frigates, anti-submarine platforms. And we have close to 50 plus years between the two of us as far as leadership roles are concerned. Ninad, after leaving the Navy, also headed a non-profit and has also been the chief operating officer with a law firm. And we call ourselves the Transformavens. Like Professor Mani said, the idea is to try and use our experience to get some transformation introduced into the modern world. Jumping into the topic, leading in the VUCA world, the way we intend going about it, the classic naval terminology, the course to steer would be we start off with a brief introduction of what VUCA is really, why is VUCA relevant today, and then talk about what are the characteristics of VUCA ready entities at the apex level. Thereafter, look at teams and then talk about what are the attributes of teams in VUCA ready entities. And thereafter, look at the leadership and talk about what are the attributes of leaders in VUCA ready entities. So we intend doing this at 3 different levels so that it's a complete package and people can take away whatever they have to from this whole program. So how many of you have heard the name Mohammed Bouazizi? I think very few would have, or probably may have come across him at some point in time. But I came across this name for the first time when I read a Forbes.com article about this person. Now, Mohammed Bouazizi was a fruit vendor in Tunisia. And in December 2010, 17th December to be precise, a decade back, the Tunisian police extorted him for a meager sum of about 600 Indian rupees. Now, they were telling him that he can't put up a fruit stall because he was a fruit vendor by profession. They were telling him that you can't put up a fruit stall in a particular place unless he paid up a certain amount of money. And it so happened that this amount was more than a day's earning for this person. And in utter despair, Mohammed Bouazizi went to the municipal commissioner's office, poured petrol over himself, and set himself on fire. The event was photographed, the video went viral, and it started resonating with the general public. There was a lot of dissonance within the country because there was unemployment, there was rampant corruption, and a lot of people started discussing this whole matter. Eventually, this led to massive demonstrations, and 28 days later, President Ben Ali, who had ruled Tunisia for close to 23 years, fled to Saudi Arabia. And this started the Arab Spring. 4 countries, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, and Bahrain, had regime changes because of this Arab Spring. And there were demonstrations in close to 16 other countries. One such country was Syria. And the Syrian leader, Bashar al Assad, chose to put down the revolution very violently within his country. And this led to civil war. And as any civil war does, it led to refugees who wanted better living conditions, peace, and prosperity. And they all started moving to Europe and Britain, where they were welcomed initially. Thereafter, they were accepted reluctantly, but it triggered a lot of debate. Specifically in Britain, there was already a growing discontent about refugees, and this was coupled with the fact that there was this financial disparity between the various EU countries. There was Germany, Britain, the richer nations on one end of the spectrum, and then we had Greece at the other end of the spectrum. So all this put together started resulted in calls for decoupling Britain from Europe, from the EU. So this essentially was the start of the Brexit story. So this is a classic case of VUCA where a Tunisian fruit vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, does something which sets off a series of events which eventually leads to a different set of consequences entirely in some other part of the world. Let's deal with the definitions for a start. Volatility is all about some parameter which is changing and rapidly and unpredictability with a great deal of unpredictability, and where the speed of change is high, the duration is often unknown. Uncertainty, something which is not definite and deterministic, where you don't know how the future is, how this parameter is going to move in the future. And it's often associated with volatility, complexity, and ambiguity. And complexity is a word that comes from complex theory. And it essentially refers to large system which consists of number of different interconnected parts, where among these parts, the cause and effects are unclear and they're often non-linear. And there has a lot of feedback loop within the system. What you see on your screen is a causal loop diagram for a biosphere system. Now, can somebody unmute and talk about what they are seeing on the screen. Can anybody unmute themselves and talk about what is it that they're seeing on the screen?
Yeah, you can unmute yourself. You've been given the permission for now.
Yeah, we can see.
Rishabh, just unmute yourself. You can speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rishabh, please
Yeah, I
tell.
think. Okay, thank you. So what I see is, at one glance, I feel like I can see a portrait of a lady, but at
Absolutely.
the same time, I can very clearly see two animals, but it is the illusion of.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
lady's
much. You
face.
just nailed it on the head. Yeah, you see different things. And this is exactly what ambiguity is. It's something which is open to multiple interpretations. It's not black or white. It's mostly shades of gray. You can see a small little, shall we say, a notice board down below in the picture, which says, if your dog does a poo, please put it in a litter bin. So are we talking about putting the dog or the poo? So this is what ambiguity is all about. Let's take a small pause here and try and answer this question to ourselves. Would you characterize the world today, driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, as an example of VUCA? If so, how? What I want you to do is take a minute, reflect, put down your thoughts on a sheet of paper, and we'll get back to you in a minute. Done? Would somebody like to talk about why is it that they feel that the current world driven by this COVID-19 pandemic is a classic example of VUCA? Anybody would please unmute yourself and present your views.
I think it is, this is Murthy here. I think it is unexpected, and to that extent, well, something which nobody has anticipated. And
we also don't know
yeah,
what is the end in some sense.
yeah, we don't know what is the end, how far it will go. And it's, of course, very complex because it is impacting the entire world.
Absolutely, sir.
And well, it is, yeah, ambiguous because we don't know where it will end. Just these are a few thoughts.
Thank you very much. Anybody else has got something to share?
Yeah, this is Ganpati here.
Please, Mr. Ganpati.
Yeah, one is the volatility, the speed which it came up. Nobody could anticipate it.
Absolutely.
When it started in China somewhere November, December, and suddenly it was all over the place. And before people could realize, it had taken the world by storm. The velocity, of course, is seen there.
Excellent.
Complexity disturbed the supply chain across. Not only in terms of manufacturing or even other, say, pharma or everything, because it's an interconnected world. And ambiguity, you don't know what the right answers are. And most of the terms which are being used, people really don't know what the meanings are, whether it's black or white or it's gray. So
absolutely.
So that's what it is like. Yeah, thank you.
So true. Mr. Ganpati, you have something to add?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else? Any thoughts to add to whatever we've discussed? Okay. So primarily, all of us, I think, will agree that the current situation as it is today is a classic example of VUCA. It is volatile, it is uncertain. We don't know what is going to happen in the future, how long it's going to last, when schools are going to open, what is going to be the job state. There's a great deal of complexity. Imagine migrant workers is something that nobody anticipated when the whole VUCA thing, when the whole crisis started. But somewhere along the way, that became an extremely important aspect of this whole COVID-19 scene. So a whole lot of new aspects start getting into the picture, which are totally unconnected and something which one can't realize when the whole thing started. So it's a classic case of VUCA. So let me just share my screen again and get back to my Okay. So to just talk about what is the origins of VUCA, or how is it that it's defined in literature. So if you look at the geopolitical world, 1990 is a kind of a watershed year, because 89 is when the Berlin Wall broke, 1991 is when the Soviet Union broke up. In fact, I think 91 December is when Soviet Union broke up. So it's in some sense an anniversary. So if you look at the geopolitical timeline, the era before the 1990 is classified as the Cold War era. Probably when you talk about the other end being defined by the Second World War. Second World War to 1990 is a Cold War era, and beyond 1990 is the post-Cold War era. Now, these two eras are very, very clearly defined, and they are defined in various different aspects. So if you look at the enemies which existed in the Cold War era, it was essentially nation states. You would have the USA fighting the USSR. Whereas in the post-Cold War era, you had non-state actors coming into the picture. You had the Taliban, you had Al Qaeda, a new set of people who were not associated with the state at all. So that's how it's different. When you look at the kind of force in the military world, the Cold War era was filled with symmetric force, in the sense you would have a column of tanks attacking another column of tanks, or a fleet of ships attacking another fleet of ships. So they were, positioned suitably. A infantry battalion attacking another infantry battalion. Whereas in the post-Cold War era, the force became completely asymmetric, in a sense that you could have 4 or 5 terrorists with explosives laden in a jeep coming and hitting a naval base or a air force base, like Pathankot happened. So something like that. So a very, very small set of people can wreak havoc in the post Cold War era. That's the kind of scenario that we face today. And if you look at the nature of warfare in the Cold War era, it was what was called shock and awe, which essentially was just go inside the enemy territory and carpet bomb the place, throw whatever weapons and ammunition you have on that place and obliterate it. That used to be the philosophy. Whereas in the post-Cold War era, one really could not distinguish who is the enemy very clearly, because the enemy was interspersed within the normal population. And therefore, there was a need to tread this place, this kind of scenario, with a light footprint. And therefore, you had the use of technologies like drones. You had use of, the special forces, which is essentially the commandos, or the people who do surgical strikes and things like that. And then technologies like cyber warfare. This is essentially how warfare changed around the 1990s. Now, if you look at what are the similarities between the military and the business world, whether it's the business world or the military, if you characterize the business as the entity or the military as the entity, it is in constant, continuous interaction with the environment. They are all open systems. So as and when the environment changes, there is a need for the entity also to suitably change. So if you look at the similar characteristics between the military and the business in certain key dimensions, both the military and the business world is constrained by resource availability. Both are dependent on high-end human capital, and they are driven by technological innovation. And last but not the least, both strive for competitive advantage. And in war, there is no second place, whereas in the business world, you still can have a second place. So VUCA has always been a term which has been associated with the military world. Why is it that today we have a whole lot of discussion about VUCA in the business world, say for the last 15 to 20 years? Now, a lot of pundits have discussed this and deliberated over this, and all of them feel that the reasons are because of globalization, which ensured that goods and services could move across the whole globe with no problems whatsoever, and digital connectivity, which again meant information could move without any problems. Social media has become such a giant today, and it can make or it can change the face of a brand with a couple of tweets or a couple of messages flowing from certain influential people. And also the fact that people could move around without any problems around the world. That brings me to the proposition which the transformers have for you today. We believe that the business environment is VUCA, and enterprises need to be ready, and they can take a leave from the military when it comes to getting themselves ready. So let's shift gears and move to what are the characteristics of VUCA ready entities. VUCA ready entities are driven by a very, very clear guiding vision, and they are modularly organized, and each modular organized, and they have very, very optimal assets within each of these organized entities. They use collaborative partnerships extensively, and this is basically done to reduce footprint. They exploit opposite paradigms very, very comfortably. You could have certain portions which are centralized and certain portions being decentralized, certain decisions being centralized, certain decisions being decentralized. Some parts would be stable, some agile. So they're opposite paradigms, but they're exploited simultaneously. They scan the environment for weak signals continuously, and they use technology extensively to do the scanning as well as for other actions. They use cyberspace extensively, social media, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the works. And finally, change in VUCA ready entities is continuous. The only thing which remains constant is vision, culture, values, which remain stable. So I'll just explain each of these in a couple of sentences in the next couple of slides. When we talk about guiding vision, the examples I'll be taking are essentially military, so that we are able to convince you that these are real attributes that these organizations display. So when you talk about guiding vision, today happens to be the Navy Day, and the guiding vision of the Indian Navy is to support India's vision of peace and prosperity by furthering maritime interests. When you talk about modular organization, we're talking about VUCA-ready entities being self-contained components capable of autonomous functioning. You would have heard in the last couple of years discussions going on about armed forces being reorganized into theater commands. And a theater command is one which would comprise ground forces, air forces, water units, and special forces. Every component that is right now kept separately in silos would all come together, and then you would have something like Western Theater Command, Southern Theater Command. So a complete theater command would be a kind of a composite unit with all its capabilities and assets encompassed within it. Okay. So when we talk about collaborative partnerships, VUCA entities thrive with collaborative partnerships which are mutually beneficial. And that's basically done because you end up reducing your footprint considerably when you go in for partnerships. So to give you an example, the Indian Navy's partners include a whole lot of navies, the US, Russia, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, and we conduct exercises with them very regularly. You want to know how this has really helped? You might recall that there was a officer called Commander Abhilash Tomi who went on through a race called the Golden Globe Race, which was a race which was to circumnavigate the complete world with absolutely no aids on a sailboat. And it was supposed to take off somewhere in 2018 and finish somewhere in 2019. Somewhere along the way, if you see, there is a point marked as the accident spot, which happened. This happened in the southern Indian Ocean, and Abhilash encountered a terrible storm. And it so happened that his sailboat capsized, the mast broke, and he, in the process of trying to rectify it, ended up having an accident with the mast and injured his back, and he was virtually incapacitated. He asked for help, and the Indian Navy immediately paged the Australian Navy because Australia happened to be closer at that point in time. The Australian Navy helped out by launching maritime patrol aircraft to try and locate him, and they also launched a destroyer. It's not often that countries can help out so much with the kind of resources that go into this. So that's how partnerships work. VUCA entities we talked about, they're capable of exploiting opposite paradigms. So let's say centralized versus decentralized. So there would be certain decisions which are centralized, and there'll be certain decisions which are left to the field or the edges. So if you take the June clashes in Galwan as an example, the centralized decision was that weapons were not supposed to be used, which meant that the people were tied down because they could not use the weapons. But then when they saw the adversary coming in with primitive medieval weapons, a decision had to be taken at a local level that they had to retaliate. And you know what happened thereafter. Similarly, if you talk about stability versus agility, again, they are opposite paradigms. So you could have troops which are guarding the line of control, which remain stable, and they are the stable component, whereas the special forces which go in and conduct surgical strikes across the border are the agile component. VUCA-ready entities scan the environment continuously for weak signals, and they're capable of connecting the dots. They gather intelligence continuously, whether it's a strategic level or at the tactical level. And this is extremely important for survival in the military world. And they use technology extensively to do this, whether it's cyberspace or whether it's social media, space, talk about satellites, we talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these tools are used for scanning the environment as well as picking weak signals. You should also remember this, that the same technologies can be weaponized. So you could create Trojans and viruses. Just to give you an example, if you just Google Stuxnet, you will realize that this was a virus which was developed by the Western world to completely paralyze the Iranian nuclear program. This happened about, I think, a decade back. Similarly, we know that social media can be used to shape public opinion, and we also know about the existence of space-based weapons. And finally, VUCA ready entities need to change continuously. So how do we do it? In terms of technology, we have the defense labs to help us future-proof ourselves, and we have think tanks which evolve new strategies, new tactics, and that leads to new acquisitions. So we have a complete chain which helps us to future-proof, and this is how we manage change on a continuous basis. Now, to sum up, VUCA ready entities are driven by a guiding vision, modular organization. They have collaborative partnership to reduce footprint. They exploit opposite paradigms, and they scan the environment for weak signals. They're tech driven, and change is continuous in VUCA entities. What I'm now going to do is request my colleague Ninad to move you into breakout rooms, into small groups, where what please remember the breakout room for your reference, and please nominate the youngest person by age as the spokesperson. What we'll request you to do is just ponder on this question. I will just flash the question in a second. Ponder on the question, discuss, and reach a consensus. Take about 4 minutes and capture your thoughts on a sheet of paper, and we'll discuss once we come back. The question which you have to ponder upon is, are there business organizations that display the characteristics that we have discussed? And what are the characteristics that we have discussed? These are the ones. If you think you're not going to be able to remember them, you can probably take your mobile and take a snap of this and use this when you're discussing this within the breakout room. Ninad, if you're ready, may I request you to open the breakout rooms?
Sriram, I suggest give them 2 minutes to take a snap so that they can use it as a basis of discussion.
So may I request all the participants to take a snap and use this as a basis for your discussion? And probably Ninad can open the breakout room in half a minute. Ninad, are you ready?
Ready, opening the breakout rooms. Opening. Okay, I have not put Professor Mani in a breakout room.
He was in my room.
No, that is only you and him in a separate room.
Correct. That was room number 5.
Okay. Samir Dalvi has asked for help.
Okay, move me in. Where have you moved me? Okay. Yeah, what happened? Is all under control? Hello, Supriya. Are you joining us now? Okay. Ninad, are you there?
I'm there.
So somebody had some problem, no?
No, I went there. I went
Okay.
and sorted out.
Okay, so
2 minutes left.
2 minutes left. You can send out a message. Let's see how the participation is.
Looks good.
I mean, these guys don't even want to open their traps. Yeah, everybody. It's a listening mode. Mein aaye hain. Let's see if we can. The breakout room has helped in some sense.
Okay.
Account कौन कर रहा है? तू कर रहा है क्या?
No.
DMA is doing it.
Okay, now we're down to 1 minute. I've given them 5 minutes. It's okay.
हाँ ठीक है 4:35. Okay ठीक है.
4:35. Yeah. So,
what's the total number?
total number is 22, but
that's
that will
20.
have there are about 3 or 4 members. So about 16 would have joined. 2 of us plus.
How many breakout rooms have you got?
4.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. And Professor Mani, I put him in 5, so he's not joined. So okay, so 20 seconds left. They will close now.
So Professor Mani should have come out. No, there's nobody there in the room.
Yeah, so I didn't want to put him in a room, man.
Probably should have taken his clearance earlier.
Chalo, now it's closing.
Okay. So welcome back to all of you. Thank you very much. We hope that you had some fruitful discussions within the room. So can I request the group 1 or breakout room 1, the representative or the scribe, to unmute and probably talk about what is it that they discussed and what are the kind of enterprises that they managed to identify. Breakout room number 1. Mr. Ganpati, were you in breakout room?
We had nominated Rishabh. Rishabh, you want to?
Right. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize we were group number 1.
Okay, fair point. Please.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Ganpati. So we wanted to talk about a company called Rebel Foods. You might know them as the company that operates the Fasos chain of restaurants and a few other brands that they have. The company was started by ex-consultants, one of which is Mr. Jaideep Burman. And if you look into the philosophy, they had a lot of passion for food, but they were also, right? So they realized that they need to approach it in an organized manner. And their initial plan was as a general restaurant, but they realized that it was not flying high. So then they evolved into a model where, they would focus on one product. That's how Fasos and the role idea came up. It was easy to manage, operate in a hygienic manner. And then they took it forward. But as they grew, they realized that, they need to offer more. So hence they kind of already became a kitchen of sorts, and they had multiple brands. They offer a pizza, they offer biryani. So they realized that with the same avenue, same location, you can offer multiple store brands to the consumers.
Okay.
And if you take as the latest example in COVID, they've had to change their model again, which is that not just focus on cloud kitchens, but they also now offer you meals, ingredients kind of ready to eat, which you get at your home, and then you mix it together and you have a meal ready to go. So I think it's a great example of a company that has evolved over the last 10 years.
So they scanned the future and they kind of fleet-footed enough to kind of shift over a business model.
Absolutely. And I think the best thing about them, and Mr. Jaydeep Burman has written on LinkedIn, you can find it, his approach to eating out and how he segregates consumers and how he is able to create, eating occasions into working data points and frameworks. It's just a fantastic read and highly recommend. Thanks, Mr. Ganpati, for the suggestion and reminding us of Rebel Foods. Yeah.
Thank you very
thanks,
much.
Rishabh. That was wonderful. In fact, now they have tied up with Wendy's for a lot of outlets in India.
Oh, wow.
They have, in fact, very surprising. They have hired people from a lot of robo and automation companies, and their entire kitchen has robots and it is automated.
Okay.
They use a lot of AI and machine learning to really interpret. So all the facets which you mentioned, you can see in
some sense already.
Yeah, a young company as such. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, should we have somebody else, the next group perhaps, sharing their thoughts? Group 2, group 3, whichever group. Please unmute yourself and share your thoughts, please.
Group 4, can I go?
Excellent, sir. Please, Mr. Girish.
I'm taking the example of the airports. Airports probably have been, hospitality and airlines have been affected by COVID like no one else probably. And, this, can you hear me? I got some message.
We can hear you, please.
Okay. So what has happened is the way the travel is happening now has completely changed.
Absolutely.
So this also subscribes to your guidelines that you have given. The guiding vision that remains the same: customer service, security, safety, and everything.
Absolutely.
But still, what the airport has done, I'm taking the example of Delhi or Hyderabad airport. What they have done, they have empowered the teams on the ground to guide and respond as to how we should go about. And so the modular organization also works. And then though some of the employees were at home, they have invited opinions and ideas as to what we should do, and so that the partnerships also happen. And so centralized, decentralized also happen. Agility, of course, had to be there because time was of the essence. And they had to scan the environment for various things. They, in fact, it is surprising that they invited the epidemiologists, security experts, and everyone to the airport to see as to how to allay the fears of the passengers, that it is safe to travel, how to manage the distancing, and they have employed lots of technology also. What they are doing currently, I'm sure you must have traveled in last few days. If you have traveled to Delhi airport or Hyderabad airport, what they have done, they have some algorithms to track and see whether there is some density of the people is increasing in a particular area, because what is in an airport parlance, what is called as a security hold area, that is where the passengers tend to aggregate, and the social distancing and everything breaks open. So they monitor that immediately. The customer service agents go there and they separate them and manage that. Also, not to speak of, now you can virtually travel without touching anything at the airport. You have your mobile, you have your scans, bio scans, passports not required to be shown, security clearance, nothing to be stamped. No one touches you unless you go and sit yourself on a seat inside the aircraft. So there has been a paradigm shift, complete agility, and this is a classic example as to how they have tackled everything in the VUCA world, I believe. And I think
absolutely
most of these things would have changed the travel and the airline industry forever.
Thank you so much, Mr. Girish, for having given us such a lovely insight into how this travel industry has changed. Yes, I think you borrowed a few aspects which I think some of which I have never thought of, and I'm certain that a lot of people here would have taken a lot of experiences from that. So anybody else has something to share? Other groups? Did you go through any discussions of a particular enterprise?
Can I come in on behalf of my group?
Please, sir. Please.
I hope the other members permit me.
Please
take the lead, and they can add.
Please, sir.
Yes, Murthy ji, please go ahead.
Yeah. What we got to mind was Reliance Group as an example of a business organization in India. Of course, internationally, we have the example of Apple, which has responded to the VUCA opportunities rather very well. So coming back to Reliance, I think they are driven by a very large vision. There was a time when Reliance was said to have a vision, which is growth is a way of life. But later they changed it to growth is life. So that's an example of a vision of a corporation, which we see actually in reality. So modular organization with optimal assets. Well, of course, Reliance is being such a large organization has
well known for that.
Different verticals, and collaborative partnerships. Lately, we see while in any business organization there are collaborations with suppliers, customers, etc.
Absolutely,
It's part of the value chain. But having said it, I think in the case of Reliance, we see it very clearly now by the way they are getting investments from Facebook and all the big names.
Absolutely.
I think that's a need of the hour, and they're actually exploiting it. There is more to strategy than money in that particular collaborations which they're working on in the recent past. So opposite paradigms, of course, stable and agility. I mean, only one example we thought about is the fact that there is a saying which goes that if the best of the oil companies in the world execute a gas line project in, say, 5 years, and a government company in India executes in 8 years, Reliance does it in 3 years. So that's an example of agility. Of course, that's what is said about Reliance. And scanning the environment, yes, of course, here it is weak signal, but in terms of opportunities, I think they are very adapted.
Absolutely, sir. The very fact that they jumped on to
tech-driven. I mean, Geo is an example of tech-driven. And finally, change is continuous. Yes, absolutely. They are growing, they're responding, they think of size. Of course, another important aspect of Reliance is vision is the size of the projects that they execute. So that has remained constant, whether it's Geo or Reliance Fresh or petrochemical project or wherever. And yeah, those are the thoughts.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I just wanted to, sorry for this, as part of this group, I just wanted to add to what Murthy sir said about Reliance.
Please.
What they picked up very well when they looked at the environment in the current scheme of things is the Atmanirbhar point, which they carried it to a good extent. The vocal for local mission.
Oh, wow. True.
What they did is they started showcasing about 30 to 40,000 artisans across the country in various places to promote their products, not only through the Reliance retail chain, but wherever else possible. I think that struck a very strong chord among not only the craftsmen, but also the entire ecosystem as a whole.
Thank you very much, sir. That is a
this is Gopinath here.
Please tell me,
just like to add to what my colleagues just spoke on Reliance. 2 points. One is the fact that Reliance was among the first in India to understand the power of data. And I think they started investing in it through the Geo platform about 4 to 5 years back. I think that was quite visionary, and today they are reaping the benefits of it.
Absolutely.
And one more thing that has come to my notice is the Reliance plan to be carbon neutral by 2035, which shows their concern towards climate change. And so they have preparing themselves to move away from fossil fuel, which I think is quite visionary in nature.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your thoughts. Anybody else, any other groups have any thoughts to add? Okay, let me close this part of the presentation. Thank you very much for each of you for having come out with your insights. What we'll now do is shift gears and shift into the next part of the talk, which is about teams. Now, most corporates score at least the modern corporates score very well when it comes to, let me just share my presentation. Yeah. Modern corporates score very well when it comes to enterprises as a whole, but when it comes to teams, there is probably a little more to do. That is our view, at least. So teams become the most important component in VUCA-ready entities, and VUCA-ready entities operate extensively using modular teams, which are purpose-driven and autonomous, and primarily because all the decision-making is shifted towards the edges. And what are the kind of attributes one sees in such teams? Teams are autonomous, agile, flexible, and they display great synergy. They thrive because there is a great deal of psychological safety. There's shared vulnerability and a clear purpose within the team. And because of this, they enjoy intense camaraderie. They use a lot of reviews before the action and after the action to improve themselves for the future. And a lot of decisions are driven by consensus. It's not necessarily top down. So what we're going to do is take some examples. So picture on your screen, the famous picture, Osama, yes. And next to it is the compound in Abbottabad, where he stayed for God knows how many years before he was actually spotted and neutralized by a team of Navy SEALs. A representative pictures of that is what is shown to you on the screen. This happened on the 2nd of May 2011, and the operation was codenamed Neptune Spear. Now, the SEALs are considered to be one of the best special forces in the world, and probably it makes sense for us to understand this a little more and deconstruct the SEALs a bit more. SEALs are essentially known for their stealth and their adaptability, and they are capable of navigating complex and dangerous landscapes with whatever minimal resources are available to them. And once they start an operation, they get into a state called the group flow state. For people who follow group flow, it looks pretty similar to what you see on your screen. It's a group of starlings, and they start behaving and acting like a single whole organism. They lose all sense of being individuals. There is no overt communication. All their senses are straining at the edges. They use gut feel and extrasensory perception, beyond sensory perceptions, to go through with whatever they are doing. And they improvise along the way. Externally, all this looks like a set of well choreographed moves, like a ballet perhaps. But the journey to get to this level of proficiency takes years of training and pain. Let us now deconstruct the SEAL training a little. All of the training is aimed towards creating teams where people feel psychologically safe. They have a sense of shared vulnerability. Teams are mission driven and they enjoy intense camaraderie and spirit to go. And the training process starts off with something called the Hell Week. And what is this Hell Week? It's 1 week of pain, fear, confusion, open water swims, obstacles, combat training, 10-mile runs, sleep deprivation. In short, it's the works. Only 25% of the people who enter this program survive the Hell Week. And the toughest part of the Hell Week is the night the trainees spend in a place called the Mud Flats. And what are these mud flats? They're large swaths of deep, thick mud with the consistency of clay. The trainees reach the place, from wherever they're staying, they use rubber boats and reach this place. Then they enter the cold, miserable, wet mud for individual competitions. The action continues till late in the night. When the trainees are physically exhausted, they're wet, they're cold, and their morale starts dipping at that point in time. This is when the instructors start playing their mind games. They would sit at the edge of this mud flat with a nice little fire in front of them and sip hot coffee, and then tell all the trainees, everyone could get off these mud flats and dry themselves if a few of you decide to quit at this point in time. Now look at it from a trainee's perspective. For a trainee, this is an extremely vulnerable moment. And unless he or she leans on someone next to him or her for support, unlikely to make through this training. They also have some other rules. Every bit of training is team driven, it's team based. A team essentially used to be a bunch of 6 people, and there's no rank or hierarchy within this system. One of the activities which represents this complete training philosophy is what you see on your screen. It's called log PT, which is essentially log physical training. In this, you have 6 trainees who perform a set of moves with a log which is about 10 feet long and weighs about 110-120 kgs. They lift the log, they carry the log, they roll the log, move it from shoulder to shoulder, push it with their feet, do sit-ups while cradling it, stand for long periods of time while holding it up. There is no strategy, no technique to get through this physical activity, but it serves to build a deep interconnectedness and intense vulnerability among the participants. Everyone in the team is in immense physical pain and it escapes nobody. Each person is so close to the other that they can feel and smell the pain the other person is feeling. If one person falters, everyone else comes to know because there is a shudder in the log, and they compensate for it by taking greater load. Externally, again, it looks pretty well choreographed and smooth, but internally, there is a continuous stream of conversation with the log being the medium of this conversation. This continuous conversation and communication creates the bond that cements these teams into high-performing units. Now, this is a picture of one of the choppers that crashed during the operation to neutralize Osama. The Osama elimination story has a subplot, which is probably important for us to discuss. You know, when the SEAL team in charge was tasked with this operation, he was told that he would be using a chopper which had never been used before in such an operation. So he chose to factor the unreliability of the chopper as one of the probable risks in the operation. So now they went about building the replica of the Abbottabad compound in the Nevada desert. They started practicing, and with each run, they simulated loss of chopper. Sometimes the chopper would be lost outside the compound, inside the compound, on the rooftop, in the yard. So the day came and the mission started very smooth. They took off from Jalalabad and entered Pakistani airspace. There was nobody to challenge them. When the first chopper reached the place and attempted to land, it skidded and crash landed inside the compound. The second chopper pilot saw this happening, and he immediately decided that he would land outside the compound. In the Situation Room in the White House, everyone was staring at their live feed transfixed. There was complete silence. Then they saw the SEALs pouring out of the chopper, the one which had crashed, and going about completing the task as if nothing had gone wrong. What made the mission a huge success? It was this process of reviews. What is this after action review? It's a short meeting after the action, which has no agenda, no minutes, no rank, no hierarchy. The aim is to create a safe space to discuss what has happened with humility and excavate the truth, not to apportion blame or to give credit to people. This is exactly what helps them create a shared model for future missions. Now, how is this relevant to the Indian Armed Forces offered Sriram and Ninad? Every military force follows a similar philosophy in its training. Only the intensity and the contours of training change depending on the kind of roles and deployments that you're supposed to do as part of your in your life in the armed forces. What we did was we pulled out a whole lot of pictures of our past training, and we thought we'll just share them with you to make you understand what we go through. What you see on your screen is a simple parade, a parade training or a march past. Marching in a contingent is hours of practice and continuous messaging within the contingent. If you want to get it right, there's a whole lot of practice and there's continuous messaging which happens inside the platoon. Ninad and I have run a whole lot of cross countries and distance running events. The winning team is the one which manages to bring the last man across the finish line. The first person is given credit, but the winning team is always the one which manages to bring the last person into the across the finish line. A classic campsite which is no man's land, where you train as teams in a plethora of activities, which start with something as simple as pitching tents. Tug of war, again a team event. During the early days of training, we are all required to and encouraged to play team games. Football, volleyball, hockey, basketball. Individual games are encouraged only beyond a particular point of your career. So this happens essentially when the spirit of teamwork gets fortified within the individual. This training becomes the building block that helps men and women in the armed forces to function as part of teams forever. And like the African saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let me narrate to you the story of a helicopter team that broke all rules and standard operating procedures to save one life. December 2017, there was a cyclone called the Ockhi, which hit the coast of Kerala. The Indian Navy is normally alerted to any of these events, primarily because we are associated with search and rescue operations at land or at sea. In this case, the Navy had been informed about capsized fishing vessels, and the Navy immediately decided to launch a helicopter, what I would call a chopper, for search and rescue. And the crew chosen for this mission was a Captain Rajkumar and his team, which comprised a co-pilot, an observer who would man the instrumentation, and 2 aircrew divers who were qualified to jump into the sea and lower strops and kind of winch people up. Captain Rajkumar himself was a seasoned veteran with over 3 decades of flying experience, an extremely accomplished pilot who was well known within his circles. The team had just finished a 3-hour training sortie. They landed, they fueled, and they were given this mission, and they took off. They headed into the Arabian Sea. The winds were high, the visibility was poor, but it was daytime. And as they were searching, which means they could spot if something was floating, and I mean, their attention could be attracted towards it. And they were searching, they got details of a capsized fishing boat. They found the boat, winched up 4 fishermen, returned to base with the rescued men, and sent them to the hospital. By this time, the sun had set. Ideally, operations should have stopped at this point in time, because you can't go on a search and rescue mission into the sea and look for survivors when there is no light. It just beats logic. But for some strange reason, Rajkumar wanted to go out again. He had this gnawing pit in his stomach saying that, look, why don't we go do one more sortie? And he had his chat with his team, and they said, okay, let's all go out for one more sortie. And they agreed. They refueled again, went back into the Arabian Sea. Now, the winds were higher, the sea was rougher, and visibility was near zero. The only way this chopper could have found somebody was if the person actually actively attracted them, say lit a flare or flashed a light or something of that nature. The chopper spent about an hour searching, but they could not sight anybody. Suddenly, they picked up a message on their radio. A merchant cargo vessel reported sighting a capsized boat with 1 survivor close to them. The cargo vessel also said that they were unable to help this fishing boat because it was being thrown around in the waves massively. So the chopper acknowledged the message and moved towards this merchant cargo vessel, which was painting on their radar screen. And they reached the ship and started looking for this capsized boat around the vessel with a searchlight, which happened to be the only equipment that they had on board to conduct this kind of a operation. They could see nothing because of the raging waves. So let me give you an analogy. Imagine that you went for a football game in the evening and played till late in the evening, and you reached home after the game and suddenly discovered that you had lost the keys to your house and you can't enter your house. You go back to your football field and start searching with a flashlight. Similar scenario is what these guys were facing, but I did not include the storm, which was part of this scenario. So the challenge was this: if they flew too high, the searchlight was ineffective. And if they flew too low, then it could mean they could end up crashing the chopper. They kind of searched for about close to 15-20 minutes. They changed heights continuously. And finally, one diver in the vessel, on the aircrafts, spotted an overturned fishing boat. And they saw one man holding onto it for dear life. He seemed semi-conscious, dazed, and he was not responding. They hovered on top of this boat and they sent the strop or the winch down. They winched down the harness for the person. Normally what happens is they winch down a harness and the person holds on to it and he comes up. Okay, this is typically what you see as an operation. I'm hoping that most of you can see this video. What you're seeing here is what happens during normal daylight. Okay. When it's very comfortable for you to see and pick up a person. But what they saw that particular night was what you're seeing on your screen. Absolutely nothing. It was pitch dark. And this is an actual video shot on the aircraft by one of the members of the crew. Okay. So the only, when they tried lowering the strop, the fishermen did not take the strop. The only option left for this chopper was to send a diver down and recover the person. Now, the captain was extremely conflicted because there are inherent dangers of losing a diver if you end up doing this kind of an operation. When they were discussing this internally, the youngest diver, who happened to be a guy called Sani, said, "Don't worry, I will go and do the rescue. Main jaunga, aap chinta mat karo." The other crew members also decided that, look, there was no other way. If they had to rescue this fisherman, this was the only way to do it. So Saini went down, he was winched down, he swam to the boat, put the harness on top of the fisherman. The fisherman was picked up, thereafter Saini was picked up, and the fisherman was brought back to base. It so happened that the fisherman had capsized close to 72 hours back, and he had not had a drop of water, and he was in completely dehydrated condition, and he was in delirium. Captain Rajkumar and his team worked totally on their own that night. There was no standard operating procedure or manual which would have accepted this kind of work that they did. And they did not have to actually take that risk. They chose by consensus to do what they had to do. My next story is about a bunch of submariners. And what you see on your screen is a extract from an article called Life Inside a Submarine in a blog of the official blog of the IIT Madras called Chennai 36. And it reads, every hardcore sailor thinks they, as a reference to the submariners, they are crazy, but they do so with great regard. Any man with a dolphin pin on his lapel deserves all the respect and some more, for they are submariners, men who volunteer to lock themselves up in a windowless, cramped steel contraption of a vessel to work tirelessly for 1.5 months at a time with 200 feet of sea above them. When they enter the submarine and the hatch closes above them, they know fully well that there are no exit doors for them even in the event of danger. Yet, they step down the ladder bravely with their heads held high. What I'm going to relate to you is a story of two young submariners who gave up their lives whilst trying to save the submarine and its crew from certain disaster. The submarine INS Sindhuratna. It is a 2,500 ton kilo class submarine with about a crew of 50 plus. The date is February 2014. Sindhuratna set sail at around 9 p.m. in the night for a routine training exercise. The crew had spent some time in harbor and they were raring to go to sea, and they were kind of very enthusiastic about this sortie. They were looking forward for some action. The protagonists for our story are two officers, Lieutenant Commander Kapish Muval, who happened to be the Deputy Electrical Officer, which means he took care of power systems and weapon systems on board, and Lieutenant Manoranjan, who was an officer who kept watches on the submarine. The crew exercised simulated emergencies while leaving the harbor, which is a typical process where you exercise simulated fires, simulated flooding, simulated equipment failure, and essentially to make your crew more reactive. We train during these kind of operations. Thereafter, the crew turned in for the night, which means 50% of the crew went on watch in various positions on the submarine, and 50% of the crew went to a state where they rested. The night went as planned. Kapish was on watch in compartment number 5, which is somewhere closer to the rear side, which is essentially where the motors are kept. Motors are installed, main motors of the submarine. And Ranjan watch on in compartment number 3, which is located slightly ahead. You can see the cutout of a submarine on your screen. This cut section is does not belong to Sindhuratna, but it is representative of any submarine. You can see the kind of density of equipment. You can see the constraint of space which submariners operate under. Okay. As drills and activities started at about 5:30 the next morning, smoke was reported in compartment number 3. The complete crew was immediately activated and the firefighting teams prepared themselves. Ranjan, who was already in compartment number 3, started looking for the source of smoke. Kapish, who happened to be on the main motors in compartment number 5, ran to assist in finding the seat of the fire. The smoke appeared to be coming from a set of from behind some panels. As you can see, it's panels everywhere in the cut section. Something seemed to be smoldering. The smoke was getting denser and visibility was slowly falling. Fire on submarines is a big danger because submarines run on batteries, and the chemical reaction results in emanation of hydrogen gas, and hydrogen, once the concentration of hydrogen exceeds a particular value, the gas inside the hydrogen and oxygen mixture becomes explosive. A small spark can set off an explosion inside the submarine. Both the officers very aware of this danger, and that is the fundamental reason why they were trying to immediately battle the fire. As they tried to locate the seat of the fire, They also saw other people within the compartment who were choking and coughing. They told the others, who were close to 11 people, to go out of the room and move to the upper deck. They said, we will take care of this fire here. You guys go out and wait for us. The last person of these 11 who left the compartment saw these two officers fighting the fire with fire extinguishers and simultaneously trying to remove flammable material from the path of the fire. The captain of the submarine was sitting in the control room, and he was in continuous communication with both the officers on internal communication systems. Somewhere along the way, they lost contact. The captain realized that the officers must have lost consciousness due to the smoke and that which they must have inhaled while trying to fight the fire. He tried to send teams with breathing apparatus, but they were unable to approach because of the intense heat and black smoke. The fire was still raging. The captain had to take a decision to save the submarine now. He took the decision to isolate the compartment, which is essentially to cut off the complete compartment, close all the openings to the compartment, and activate what is called a major firefighting system, which pushes a whole lot of freon gas into the compartment. No human being can survive once freon gas is injected into the compartment, and this had to be done in the case of Sindhuratna. The bodies of both the officers were finally recovered only after the submarine was towed back to harbor and the compartment was sanitized completely. Kapish and Ranjan gave up their lives attempting to save the rest of the crew as well as the complete submarine by itself. And on this somber note, we will move into breakout rooms and discuss another question, which is, what are the methods to build extremely cohesive teams in business enterprises? And the kind of attributes that you were looking at are flashed on your screen. I will request you to take a snap of this so that you can use this as a basis of your discussion. Probably in half a minute, Ninad can open out the breakout rooms.
I'll open out the breakout rooms. Professor Mani sir, you're putting one room that is just for you, so you can exit and come into the main room.
No problem. I experienced that earlier also, not to worry. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm opening the rooms now.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So Rishabh, are you having any problem going to the room? Okay, Rishabh is gone. Sangram and Sanjay. Any problem in going to the breakout room? Okay, not joined. Assigned to 1, assigned to 2, assigned to 3. Yes, I've assigned a Sangram and okay, they've gone. You're back? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm back. I think you will need to rush your portion.
Okay, we are at 17:15.
17:15. So in another 2 minutes, probably you can close the breakouts. Whatever discussions they've had, they can probably talk about. You can probably announce 2 minutes more. 2 minutes, and we'll quickly wind up in 5 minutes, and then you will need to probably rush through. Professor Mani says you probably need to open it out for questions also.
Yeah, so 17:45 will close. I mean, for questions, we'll leave it. 15 minutes of questions.
Yeah, but you will have to run through your portion, I think.
Yeah, I'll run through. Don't worry. I can skip one story if you want, but that will.
Let's see how it pans out. There are two ways of doing it. Either we narrate both the stories and skip the discussion, or probably leave the discussion for
the question answer.
For the question answer, perhaps. We can probably integrate the discussion and the question answer. Makes sense?
Yeah.
We'll do that, I think. So we go through the stories and we will integrate the question answer and the discussion.
So 2 minutes left.
Okay.
I'll start my sharing once.
Once the debrief is over. Debrief hoga na abhi. They'll come back. We'll spend about 3 to 4 minutes debriefing.
So we'll name, just name the people in the first. Our friend Nambiar is there. Huh?
Yeah, I know. He asked me a message passed me a message just before we started saying, "Can you give me the link?" So I sent him the link.
So in room number 1, you can probably ask Mr. Girish Deshmukh. Room number 2, there is Aishwarya.
1 second. Okay.
Room number 2, Aishwarya. In room number 3 is one Deepa.
If you're going to get females only, you may.
Room number 4, there is Harish. Just these are names, representative names of the rooms. So
let's see.
Okay, we are ending in 50 seconds.
I'm thinking we should have some normal breakout rooms. I think we should end breakout rooms with some music or something like that. Next time, let's try that out.
Music, huh?
Yeah, computer se play karte hai na.
Karna padega. We put some march. Convert boogies march.
That or probably I was thinking more like Mission Impossible.
No, not that. Kadam kadam bada hai chal.
God. So I just had a word with Professor Mani. He said, yeah, they seem to be deeply engrossed.
Okay. Yeah. Close now.
Yeah. Welcome back, ladies and gents. I hope you had some fruitful discussions. So in the interest of time, I'm going to probably name a few people if you're okay with it. If you already had nominated people, scribes, can you just pop up and tell me? Room number 1.
I think in our group, I will request Sridhar or...
No, Murthy, why don't you go ahead? Please go ahead.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, sir, I think it's, of course, the importance of a cohesive team need not be elaborated. So what we identified as some of the important factors which build a cohesive team is a very strong purpose.
Absolutely.
Which of course is mentioned in the list also, but we believe this is absolutely necessary. And a clear vision of what happens when we deliver as a cohesive team. So that visualization is also very important apart from a purpose. Transparency and trust, that is, one should believe in each other, and of course they have to be open, mutual respect, and of course shared information is very important. At least in a business context we see this one-upmanship or hiding information, which is very bad. So I think that's very essential. And yeah, these are some of the factors that we have.
I think you nailed it. You're going to make it difficult for the others to pitch in now, in some sense. Okay, another team, please. If you could just share your thoughts. So this, yeah, please. Somebody from.
This is team 3 here. This is Gopinath here.
Please tell me.
If it's okay, if this is okay with my colleagues, I would just go continue with my.
Go.
I think one thing is very clear that as a team, the the team should be focused on the vision, like as they say, it is like, Arjun who focused on the eye, of the, when he took the arrow.
Absolutely.
So, so one thing that we discussed and we realized, the importance of teamwork has come out very well during this pandemic time, because many of us are continue to work from home, but the amount of collaboration that goes behind in ensuring that the work goes on smoothly, I think it is all because of teamwork that companies have succeeded in delivering. Because you require the collaboration with your IT team, with your logistics team, with your supply chain team. But I think it has all happened so seamlessly and frictionless. It's all because of teamwork. So I think pandemic has really re-emphasized the importance of teamwork and why working as a team can really deliver more than, if 1+1 is 2, I think you can deliver 1+1 or 3 or 4.
11.
Working as a team and collaborating.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In a sense, you nailed it.
That is what I
in the context of VUCA, we said that teams are the way to go. And I think you kind of brought it out very beautifully, saying that VUCA times, pandemic times, you are working in teams of in terms of teams, and that's become the most important thing. Anybody else has any other thoughts to share? If anybody's got some thoughts.
This is team 2.
Please, Mr. Ganpati.
Ganpati here from team 2. So we will talk of certain specific activity that happen in organization. Generally, you have cross-functional teams who handle a lot of projects, whether it's quality or whether it's in manufacturing and so on. Another one is the outbound training, which happens over a period of time, say 2-3 days, which covers all the aspects. There is a vision, there is a purpose, there is trust, there is collaboration, there is communication, and through a series of simple and complex activity, debriefing, connecting it to the values of the organization. So these are some of those activities which business organizations resort to bring in this, all these facets of a team.
There is nothing like pushing people out of the comfort zone and getting them to coalesce together around in that kind of a scenario. I think you nailed it in some sense, because all these activities is not something that people do on a regular basis. So they get out of the comfort zone, and then the magic happens in a lot of ways. Anybody else has something to add?
Hi, this is Rishabh from Team 4. Just wanted to add.
Please pitch in.
Yeah. So I think one element that we have seen personally, I've seen in young teams, especially at tech companies, but also in general, is that when you talk about sense of ownership, what we notice is previously people would talk about the good news openly and the bad news, in private. But if you want to really create a sense of ownership amongst the team and, bring a sense of camaraderie, you also have to talk about the bad things, and the bad things should come from the senior manager. What it does is it makes everybody realize that everybody here is human. Everybody here has the best interest at heart. And that allows them to realize that, mistakes can be done, right? The second thing is people also appreciate that instead of having a top-down approach, you have a bottom-up approach to decision-making and creating the long-term strategy or, yearly focus. Let the folks who are working on the ground give inputs into what they want to focus on in the future, keeping in mind the vision and mission of the company, of course. And that, again, allows a kind of sense of ownership in where they are.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rishabh. So if nobody's got anything else to add, then we will move on to the next phase. Ninad, can I request you to share your...
Yes. Hello, thank you. And I'm Ninad, and I'll be covering the last part of this workshop, which is the leader. Right. So we have discussed about entities, we have discussed about teams, and all teams have to have leaders who produce to lead them, obviously. So let's have a look at what VUCA enable leaders, some of their attributes and some of their qualities are. So VUCA ready teams cannot be led by...
You may have to go to slideshow mode.
Okay, it's not on slideshow. It's not on slideshow. Is it?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Fine. Is it okay? All right.
Yes, Jana, it's okay. It's fine.
Okay. So the VUCA ready teams cannot be led by leaders steeped in the traditional paradigms of leadership. You know, the heroic leaders who lead from the front are no longer relevant in the VUCA environment. So leadership is a team sport in a VUCA ready entities. Decisions are taken by consensus. So let us look at some stories. I'll quickly go through stories of two such leaders and their actions when confronted with the VUCA environment. The first one is a story of a captain of a warship who led his team to pivot from their mission while patrolling the seas. Their ship was the INS, it was the INS Sumitra, which was on an anti-piracy patrol in the Gulf of Aden. It was led by a captain, Commander Milind Mokashi, who was the captain of the ship. And they were on an anti-routine, anti-piracy mission off the coast of Somalia in the Gulf of Aden. When they received news about Yemen. Now, Yemen was a part of the Arab Spring, as we have discussed earlier, and there was an ongoing civil war there. And in the civil war, there was always a disturbed area. It was a VUCA environment, but it became so complicated when the Saudis launched airstrikes there. And when they launched airstrikes there, there was a big turmoil, and there were a lot of Indians working in Yemen who wanted to be evacuated, who wanted, to be evacuated from that place. And when INS Sumitra came to know of this, the captain had a gut feeling that since they were the nearest Indian ship there, they would be tasked to evacuate the Indians, and he started planning and reconfiguring the ship. Now, INS Sumitra is a patrol vessel. It is designed for a crew of 200 and 200 sailors. So they had to reconfigure because they would be taking on ladies, children, old men. They had to reconfigure civilian passengers, the mess decks, the toilets, medical facilities, food for additional, and eventually they got their orders to go to the port of Aden. Initially, they reached the port of Aden, where they found approximately 350 Indians waiting for them. They were given 45 minutes to, board them on board. Now, in 45 minutes, it was totally impossible. 350 Indians with their baggages. They had to do the necessary security checks. They have to check physically that nobody smuggled anything on board. They had to frisk for contraband, explosives, scanning the baggage. It was a task. In this short period of time, the captain got the crew together and gave them instructions that the teams had to work autonomously. I mean, you couldn't come back for instructions at every small run. You had to work autonomously. He told them to be thorough, to be polite, firm, and humane, because these were stressed out people. They had left everything what they had, the life savings, and just come with one proper suitcase. So they were stressed out. You had to deal with them humanely. The work started. The crew started to onboard people, and security was provided. They had 2 layers of security, snipers in place in case the Yemenis got some ideas. And by midnight, they completed the boarding process and got everybody on board and sailed out to Aden. This was done by autonomous teams. Totally, they conducted rescue operations in different ports, in 5 different ports. The total operation was called Ops Rahat. They had to evacuate Indians from Al Hudaida, which was under Yemeni control. So they were entering enemy territory. In another port called Al Shihir, there was no jetty. So the Indians had to be embarked on board by boats. Again, a VUCA environment, you're in enemy territory, you have to be ready with everything and at the same time accomplish your mission. So they did this. They did 5 missions. In total, the Indian Navy did 9 missions of rescue and evacuated Indians from 9 ports. And for this, the captain of the ship, Commander Mokashi, was decorated and the crew was honored. But this is the type of mission that they undertook in a totally VUCA environment. And there, the captain, the leader of the team, had to step up and take responsibility or ownership. I'll come to another story of another leader, and her name in this case is Lieutenant Commander Vartika Joshi. Now, she was the leader of the expedition called Navika Sagar Parikrama, It was the expedition of the first ever all-woman crew to circumnavigate the globe on board the Indian naval sailing vessel Tarini. Now, this expedition lasted about 254.5 months at sea. It had a crew of 6. And when you're sailing around the world, you have to do certain mandatory things like cross the equator twice, cross all degrees of longitude, and you have to cross the 3 capes, that is the southernmost points on the 3 continents, that is the Cape Leuven in Australia, the Cape Horn in South America, and the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. So these were the definition of this voyage which they did. Now, as skipper, Lieutenant Commander Vartika Joshi was in command of not only the vessel but also of the expedition. The crew would instinctively look to her for directions and instructions. And to prepare for this, Vartika said she first started by introspecting and becoming aware of her strengths and shortcomings. It was only after this that she could understand and work with the rest of the crew members. And she decided that she would lead by example and erase the status divide. Now, she was the commander, she was the captain of the vessel, so she had certain privileges of hierarchy, but she chose to do away with them. During the training phase, she involved herself in all routine and mundane chores like washing and cleaning of the boat, and even washing the dishes after a meal. And over a period of time, the crew became receptive and vulnerable with each other. They bonded to such an extent that they could read each other's minds even in their sleep. The crew drew upon each other's fortitude for the challenges that the ocean threw in their path, and the challenges were many. The sea is an unforgiving terrain and recognizes no gender. The crew of the vessel encountered rough seas on numerous occasions. On occasions, they experienced extreme cold with stormy weather and winds in excess of 140 kilometers per hour, and waves as high as 30 feet. The 30 feet is, if you stand on the road and look at the second floor of a building, that's how high the waves would have been. While crossing the Pacific at Cape Horn, which is referred to as the Everest for the seafarer, they encountered extreme rough seas, inclement weather, which forced them to steer the boat in pitch darkness for 17 hours at a stretch. At times, they ran out of water and had to collect rainwater to drink and cook, because in the middle of the ocean, there's not going to be any bottled water for you. And another occasion, the steering gear of the boat broke down in the middle of the Sea of Mauritius, rendering them literally rudderless in the middle of the sea. They somehow carried out emergency repairs in mid-ocean and made it to the nearest port for repairs. So here we have seen 2 examples of leaders when operating in an VUCA environment. I will now take this request all of you to just kindly ponder and capture your thoughts on a paper. What were the attributes that were evident for the leaders as they respectively dealt with the emergent situation? We have seen 2 very, very different situations when military leaders have reacted or acted in a certain faction. What do you think are the attributes that they would have displayed? Just take 2 minutes and we'll share now. Okay, is anybody ready? Would you like to share and would like to share?
Yes, Ninad, good evening. This is Gopinath here.
Yes, Yes, Kopil.
Good to see you after a long time. Anyway, I think a couple of things that came to my mind immediately.
Yes.
One is, the confidence of the leader in the team member. I think that is very important, and where the leader gives them the authority or the right or to take decisions, independently, because the leader knows that they will be working for the common good of everybody. So that confidence is something very important. Second is, the mental toughness of the team members. I think for any such assignments, I think the mental toughness plays a very critical role, and that again is left to the leader how he inculcates that toughness in the team. Like for example, survival is something that is instinct. It is an instinct that is there in everyone. But then in difficult times, how do you bring out that instinct to the this of everybody, benefit of everybody, is something that the leader inculcates, in the team through examples. So I think these are the two things that it immediately came into my mind.
Wonderful. Yes, wonderful. You got it. Anybody else would like to share what do you think are the attributes of a VUCA ready leader?
Can I pitch in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think the leader is solution oriented. Both the leaders have been solution oriented. They were not living in the problem, but they were looking at the solution. To that extent, they're very innovative. And I think empathy is one more. In the first case to, of course, the 350 stranded Indians. In the second case to the teammates. And of course, the commitment is obvious. And yeah, they led from the front. And of course, self-confidence and confidence in the team members.
So,
there's a few thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just like to add at the beginning, if you know, there's one distinction I'd like to make, that the VUCA enabled situation, the heroic leader or the one who leads from the front is slightly outdated concept in this environment. It is more of a leader who acts as a catalyst and let the others also can contribute.
Okay.
So that heroic मैं आगे बढ़ूं, हम तुम्हारे साथ है, that is no longer relevant. It's more of a catalyst who sort of makes things happen.
Yeah.
Anybody else before I go on? Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll just go on. I'll just go back to my slide and just share it. So this is where we were. Right. So these are the attributes of leaders. One is they have self-mastery, awareness and control over self. They are technically very sound. They're very good at what they do. They have a willingness to become vulnerable. And we have seen this with the Lieutenant Commander Vartika Joshi. Become vulnerable, accept your shortcomings and make it known that I don't know it all, but together we know it. We can do it. Have a coaching mindset in which you can mentor your team members and encourage them, and be absolutely authentic with everybody. So these are some of the attributes which are absolutely necessary in VUCA ready entities. And like the great Nelson Mandela said, lead from the pack and let others believe that they are in the front. This sums up a VUCA ready leader, and we all know what environment Nelson Mandela was in and how he functioned there. So to sum up, we have seen the attributes of an entity, a VUCA ready entity, a VUCA ready team, and a VUCA ready leader. This is in summation. You can take a photograph of this if you want to help you remember, but these we have covered these along with stories and how actually on the ground, how individuals or teams or entities actually deal with situations which are totally out of the blue, totally volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Before we move on to the questions, we'll be taking questions from anybody. So this is a perspective of teams. Now, high performing teams have a synergy. And as you can see on the graph, they are very high in team effectiveness and performance impact. rather than just ordinary teams, which are there, pseudo teams or potential teams, they're on the left-hand side. But high-performance teams are right at the top of the graph, and this is where team coaching comes in, and this is our area of expertise of team coaching. It is in the middle zone of team building, coaching, and facilitation. It is a very niche. It's very niche area, which emerges from team building, team performance coaching, leadership team coaching, and systemic team coaching, which covers tasks, processes, stakeholder organization, and system focus. So to conclude, Transform Events extends services in team coaches. We do coach teams for high performance. This is our contact details in case anybody is interested in team coaching or taking their teams to the next level. We would be happy to engage with you. You can contact us on these on emails or phone numbers, and do follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, where we regularly post updates on these topics. So we look forward to working with
Mr.
you.
Murthy wanted to take a snap of, I think, one of those slides earlier. Mr. Murthy, you can unmute yourself and probably ask your question. What do you have anything specific in mind?
Sir, I think 2 slides back.
Okay, sir.
This one?
Yes, that's one. The one with the graph.
Oh,
this
okay.
one. Okay.
Yeah, that's right, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I will be. This is the areas where we work in: learning and development, outdoor simulation labs, where we have some unique programs where we take people in a sailboat, sail from Gateway of India to Manwa, and recreate the VUCA environment in that, and followed by a debrief. There is facilitation, and there is team coaching. So we look forward to working with you. I'll stop the share now, and I will also share with you on the chat. We'll take questions now, if any.
Right, I must confess, both Ninad and Sriram, that was very captivating. It was perhaps one of the first times that we learned out of how somebody else tackled emergency situations. We often say that we need simulation to learn, but I think this kind of a simulation no one would like to experience, but yet the way you presented it in a very captivating manner gave a lot of learnings to all of us. As we suggested, the floor is open for questions. In the meantime, I had one question which I'd like to begin straight away, which was sent to me by one of the participants, and that is, how do we encourage people to become willing followers? Because the whole concept of leadership has that rider that a good leader has sufficient followers. And if everybody wants to be a leader, then there are no followers. So what have been your experiences since you come from a situation where teamwork is always been critical? Over to you all.
I'll take that, Ninad.
Okay.
Primarily, if you want to be, in our experiences and the way we are trained, if you want to become a leader, you have to start off as a follower. And that is a great motivation for you to be a good follower. I hope I have given some sense of what happens in our lives. So you start off at the lowmost end of the spectrum. You have a certain set of people whom you look up to, who mentor you, take care of you. And along with that, you also have a bunch of people who happen to be your peers, who are a part of your team. So you grow along with them, and suddenly you find yourself pushed to the top, and you become a leader. In which case, all the learning that you've learned, all the thoughts that you've gone through, and all that has been given to you over a period of time when you were a follower, all that starts playing in your head. So it's very important to have been mentored and to have been coached in some sense well when you are a follower, in which case you turn out to be an exemplary leader yourself. I would kind of sum it up in that sense.
Absolutely. I think, as you rightly said, the willingness to be a follower paves the way to become a leader over a period of time. But you also agree with me, it is easier said than done, and it calls for a huge amount of mindset change, as one would say. That's wonderful. I think that was a nice perspective. Open to questions. You can either type them in the chat box, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. Floor is open to everybody, please. Go ahead.
Please unmute and ask, because that's the only way everybody is going to gain from it, if it's okay by you.
Hello. Yeah, Mr. Sriram and Mr. Ninad, I have this dilemma always, because I have been a corporate executive for over 3 decades, and now last 3 years I'm a management consultant and also a coach. I have a few clients. What I very conspicuously see is that in some of my client organizations, there is quite a bit of narcissism in practice, especially coming from the top. Not, in fact, the managing director or whatever you call. So I very clearly see in one particular client case where the leader is far more, what I would say, visionary. The company has grown in my 3 years of association from, say, something like 25 crores to 60 crores of billing. Whereas in the other case where the managing director is a narcissist, something like, it has actually degrown from 10 crores to 4 crores. The writing is on the wall. I'm a virtual CFO for some of these clients, and I have made a calculation of in the last 2-3 years how many people have left. I'm talking of the example B, bad example. Lakhs of rupees are spent on recruiting people, but within 3 months, 6 months, they're leaving. So coming to the question, what are your thoughts, sir, on how to bring a transformation in these leaders? Because that would finally mean that a virtual CFO like me also will, no amount of management consulting will help. He's undoing everything. Yes, sir. That's a question.
If you recall, sir, I'll just add one sentence and then you can take over from there. If you recall, sir, when we spoke about teams, you specifically mentioned transparency, trust, purpose, and vision. Open, shared information. These were I'm quoting you. These were the things you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think if you're not going to be able to see that in the environment you're functioning in, how are you expecting, the kind of the people who are with you to rally along with you? Ninad, you got something to add?
Yes, sir. So I think the realization when you're part of a team, and like somebody mentioned, there are these offsites which are happen where all this happen, but more often than not, the leader sometimes skips them. It's very important for the leader to participate, in all these, and the realization dawns on him. So the only way we can think of is participate, be a member of the team, and consider yourself part of the team. Be absolutely vulnerable, rather than be consider yourself as outsides. Because in today's world, the heroic leader who lead from the front is gone. It's gone by sell by date. The current circumstances do not permit. I mean, of course, there will be leaders, but the results speak for themselves. So you have to be part of the team. You have to part of the team. The realization will dawn upon you.
Muthi, sir, one thing that I could probably suggest is you may have to take this person out from the environment that he's normally working in and being narcissistic about. You have to take him out of the zone where he functions this way. Probably, like we said, we discussed a sailboat. If you put him on a sailboat, I mean, in fact, there is a team coaching exercise which is done in somewhere in the West. They take a boat from Finland and sail it down, if I remember right, to some place like Honolulu. They have people on board, but then these 10 or 12 people who are part of this boat need to man it and do things in the boat. Have to scrub the boat clean and keep it maintained and ensure it sails, man the sails. This is the kind of work that they do. And when they do this out of their comfort zones, they realize that, look, I am probably not the king of all that I perceive or all that I see at all points in time. And I think only that kind of realization will be able to shift the perspective in this person that, look, we probably need to realize that everybody is vulnerable. And probably I am in my position because of all the people that who kind of help me reach my destination in some sense.
Yeah,
Am I making
absolutely,
sense?
sir. I think that's a very useful insight. In fact, I do see this both in theory and practice. People who have that narcissistic tendency, they just need someone to blame, keep blaming, and they keep away from action because they will lose the opportunity of blame. I think what you have just now said is a very interesting insight of taking this fellow out, maybe into a beer bar or whatever else.
Exactly, sir. You need to be able to pull them out from where they. I mean, I can tell you about. I mean, just to add to this, people who go to the International Space Station, they need to be together for 18 months, 20, 24 months, or whatever kind of time that they have to spend together in a place which is completely isolated, and you can kill yourself in some sense. So it's absolutely important that the coalesce together and they are very clear about the kind of relationship that they need to have before they go into that space shuttle and go to the International Space Station. So very often, I mean, I think it applies to every crew which goes there. They are put together in the desert, in a place where they have to, it's an equivalent of probably the big boss, where they have to live together and learn to understand each other and work with each other. And it's exactly this, you're pushed out of your comfort zone, you're forced to live with each other, you work with each other, and you probably realize at that point in time, this is not the way I'm working is probably not the right way to work. Just a suggestion, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
One point I wanted to make. Excuse me. Can I? Yeah.
Please, sir.
Yeah. The point I was trying to say that a lot of this issue Mr. Murthy described, they emanate from being far too much focused on people rather than processes. Because a general assumption behind such thing is that people make things happen, but people make such things happen, but in real life, it is the processes that do the work. Now, for example, in services, we have seen they're very strong on processes and the management. So as a result, individual heroic shape and stuff like that is completely kind of absent, and people easier to get people working according to a process in form of a team. And the other biggest enemy is the evaluation system. Earlier also I mentioned that our performance evaluations reward individual performance and not the team performance to that extent.
Absolutely, sir.
And therefore people are always pushing, at the cost of anyone, it's a kind of very dysfunctional competition. And the third thing is that, which I feel is, best law, if good old we go, most of the people have no belonging to the organization. Nothing has been done. I mean, forget the self-esteem part. They're just there for a job, that is the physical security and the salaries and stuff like that. But the higher order needs are never met. So as a result, huge amount of dysfunctional work, politics and all that stuff is going on. So I suppose a management system which takes care of such things can do a wonder. And I would draw attention to Dr. Deming's philosophy, who turned around Japanese companies. And in very successful Japanese organizations, you seldom know the name of the chief executive. For example, most of the people will find it difficult to know the name of Toyota's, managing director and chairman today, or for example, that Sony or any other. And how come in India or anywhere a little, 15% growth and there is a big photograph and write up and PR exercise in the press, who is the leader who did it? So it is who did it and not, entire team is forgotten. So that kind of servant leadership, self-effacing leadership, empowering relationship, that's a completely new ball game, which I don't think we have learned there. Take a look at the number of books that we have. For example, leadership, you will find 500 books, or maybe I don't know how many to Google, but on followership, you will find 3. So how, like you rightly said earlier, that it's important to become a good follower first, but there are no guidelines, there's no coaching, no training, nothing. So people emulate the leader. They say it's important to become a leader than to be a follower. And then we have everyone a leader, at the top, more generals than the soldiers. And as a result, probably nothing works.
I think Indrapalji has given you a very good idea. You should conceive a program on effective followership.
Bingo, sir. Thank you.
Because
I've attended once many years ago. There's one American author, forget the name, who wrote 1 or 2 books on followership, and I think it's really very eye-opening. But it's somebody has to look up the references.
You've given us a thought, sir. I think probably the industry needs this as a need of the hour. Probably we can really look this up.
No, it is an absolute fact. You see, even when we try to familiarize people with concepts like servant leadership, which is actually talking on the emphasis of followership, as Indrapalji said. People kind of cringe at the word servant leadership. They say, why should I serve? Why should I serve? Kind of a thing. But we always say that you first serve, then you deserve. And that's exactly the message that has to go across to people. Anyway, let's continue. If there are any more questions, anybody, please go ahead and share your thoughts, your questions as you might. We still have another about 10 minutes so that we stick to our normal BMA routine of being on time and the strict armed forces regime of punctuality. So we can do both together. Anybody who hasn't expressed a thought, if you would like to say
one of my favorite grouses. You look at the salary spread that we have in our companies. Chief executive earns 400 to 500 times the average salary at the bottom. For example, average workman salary you take, the chief executive will earn 200 times, 300 times. While what I have read somewhere is that the Japanese company, that kind of a multiplier is around 20 to 30 at the most. Now, how can we have a teamwork when somebody is earning 400 times of your salary? So these sort of things, which are very, very, what you call, they are very systemic problems, For example, and that comes from that assumption that people make things happen. Get a new CEO, pay him huge salary, and then do this thing that everybody then turn against him, because this fellow is earning 200 times my salary, why should I make him succeed? That kind of dysfunctional behavior sets in. So it's a complete change that we have to think that how organization make do things happen.
I noticed Captain Sanjay is here with us. Sanjay, would you like to share a view or an experience? Captain Sanjay is a pilot and he's often involved in doing a lot of sorties into the middle of the ocean where he works for some of his clients.
Oh, very nice, sir. We'd like to hear your perspective.
Sanjay? I guess we are still in days of network not being perfect. Anyone else in case by the time Sanjay gets in?
Good evening, this is Gopinath here. Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Yes, Sriram and Anath, first of all, congratulations for giving us such a wonderful presentation. Webinar, which really we could understand the dynamics involved in leadership in a VUCA world when you compare with the way the armed force operates. Now, I have been reading a lot about this VUCA world, and I think the current thought is like we need to give a little bit of positivity to the word VUCA, because I think what experts feel is that the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is a little bit negative in nature. So I think looking at this is a perspective that I read a few days back. So what it says is that given the current pandemic situation, I think that we need to look at from a more positive perspective. So there is a new definition given to it where they call it as a vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. I think you have covered it, of course, like, you have covered the vision part, the clarity, and the so I think, going forward, we should look at VUCA in a more positive way than, look at in a little bit, critical or negative way. I mean, that is just a thought. And I was reading the some articles the other day, and this thought came to me when this webinar news was flashed to me in WhatsApp. So I thought, let me, put across these views, because the first time I came across this concept where they said that in this today's circumstances, we need to look at it from a more positive way. So I just thought of sharing it, and wants to get from you what is it that you feel about this new paradigm about VUCA being discussed in the management, among the management professionals.
So absolutely, Gopinath. So if you recollect our lecture, throughout the lecture, we have said that to effectively navigate in a VUCA environment, you have to be VUCA enabled. Now, VUCA can stand for two things. It can stand for the traditional way or what you are saying. So VUCA, to navigate VUCA, you have to be VUCA enabled. So take your pick which VUCA you want to be.
Yes.
Literally, and I think what Gopinath was saying was if this is the kind of VUCA environment, how can we modify our behavior? How can we modify our action process to move from all that negativity into positivity so that we have the way ahead? I think that's a nice point which is going around, as he rightly said, in several articles which have been coming recently. So that's a nice perspective.
In a sense,
Anybody else? Anybody
reaction
else?
to the VUCA situation is VUCA again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had earlier put up a slide about the leader you admire most, military leader. Yeah, I mean, to my, at least as far as the Navy is concerned, I keep reading the articles of Admiral Arun Prakash. I think he's a very astute observer of the Navy's needs and the whole geopolitical situation, etc. I do not know how
Absolutely,
he's
and he's a person who's always been pretty vocal about
it and extremely articulate. I think
very articulate.
He is extremely right. I would recommend those who want to understand Navy better to read his stuff.
So he was one of the first people who said that we need to counter China's aggression at sea.
Yes.
We need to go and blockade them in Sunda Strait, and there's one more 9.5 degree channel, if I remember right, that's what it's called. There are two places which are choke points for global trade. So he was the first one to propose that, look, we need to really take them on there. So he's an extremely brilliant man. And incidentally, sir, he's a fighter pilot, Harrier pilot.
I see. Okay, so it's the same stream of service as yours.
We are not pilots, sir. We are surface Navy officers, but he was a naval officer who was actually a pilot who operated off aircraft carriers. He's operated both of the Vikrant and the Virat over a very, very checkered career. And if I remember right, he was also part of the 71 conflict.
Okay. But Indian Express, he writes very frequently.
True, sir.
Wonderful articles, actually. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else before we kind of, as we say in BMA language, bring in a pause to this learning process, because we believe learning has to go over forever. Between Sriram and Ninad, they have shared so many perspectives, and Ninad has also posted the contacts where you can reach up with them. All of you who registered, we'll be happy to give Ninad and Sriram your contacts so that they can send you more information about the work they do. And those of you who are interested can always get back to them at an appropriate point in time. Anybody has any questions, or can we kind of move to the two most important formalities of this evening? One is our group photograph, which we do digitally. And second, of course, we'd have a formal vote of thanks, which would be the least that we can do for the wonderful effort put in by Ninad and Sriram. Can I request everyone to put on your cameras so that we can capture this moment that we spent together this evening learning from Ninad and Sriram?
So
while
they're doing that, I'll just request, I put a link. We would love to hear about what you thought about our today's program. So that link is our Google page. You can also rate us like you rate your Swiggy or Zomato. That will help us improve ourselves. So kindly do take some time out and click on that link and tell us how you felt the program. And this is for us to help us, do more such programs with different people.
I almost thought, Ninad, you were saying if you click that and complete the Google form, you'll get Zomato and Swiggy vouchers. All right. May I just suggest, while we get ready for this group photograph, everybody quickly, the next Wednesday has a very interesting session by the director of KPMG, Miss Nishat, who's going to talk to us about the fifth dimension at the workplace. Considering all that's going around us, here is one more thought-provoking webinar which is planned for you next Wednesday. And the one after that has the managing director of Landor Associates, Lulu Raghavan, who is going to talk to us about the power of branding. So next 2 Wednesdays, I've given you the quick schedule that you can expect. For the next 2 Fridays, the schedule is as under. Next Friday is a program where we have 2 international speakers from USA and UK, and they're going to talk to us about business analytics. And since they're coming in all the way from USA and UK digitally, our Friday Funda will be from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. next Friday. That's a change from the normal routine. Of course, we'll remind you on WhatsApp and on the email, but I thought since all of us are together, we can really give you an update on that. And 18th of December is a landmark first time ever BMA ESG conclave, Environment, Social Governance, which is being inaugurated by none other than the very eminent Pullela Gopichand, who's going to talk to us about how to produce leaders so that the country can be more ESG sensitive. This is followed by several presentations from leading companies about their ESG initiatives. 18th December, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Again, mark your diaries so that you can join us to continue to be part of this learning journey. May I request Oindrila and Supriya, our efficient team from the Secretariat, to please have our group picture so that we can cherish this memento of the time we spent learning with these two very esteemed service personnel from the Indian Navy. And we salute you once again on the occasion of the Indian Navy Day. Please pause for 2 minutes, put on your best smiles while Oindrila and Supriya do the needful. All right, thank you very much. And in all fairness, I'd like to request one of my own esteemed colleagues, a member of our managing committee. He has some network issues, so his video is not playing up, but I think Murthy, your audio is as strong as your video. May I request you to do the honors and please propose the vote of thanks on behalf of all of us and BME. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Mani. And thank you, Commodore Sriram, and thank you, Commander Ninad, for a wonderful session, a truly wonderful session. Frankly, the VUCA times and leadership are two things which many of us from the corporate world are very much interested. So we really heard many useful insights from both of you today. And your format of this session of getting us into some exercises has been a great help in a practical learning and generation of some thoughts. I would say that this session has been a great, given us great food for thought, and we will keep thinking about some of the concepts. And as I said, not just from the point of view of we as individuals, individual managers, but also from the point of view of nation building, the leadership concepts, the team, and other various important matters which you have covered today are very, very, very much necessary. Some of the challenges that all of us face, either in corporates or as a nation, are related to the quality of leadership. So thank you very much, and thank you for your valuable time. Good day to you, sir.
Thank you, and thanks, RSR. You really reflected what was in all our minds. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Stay safe and stay blessed as we progress from lockdown to unlock.
If I may just add a word,
please, Sriram.
On behalf of the Transform Mavens, thank you very much for your participation. It was wholehearted, and we really enjoyed discussing this whole thing with you. And we hope to keep in touch in some form or the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you to BMA, sir. Thanks to you also.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think we can.